screen actually as we talk about this topic. Let's see, make sure this comes through. So, all right, everybody see that?
Yeah.
Okay, super. So today our topic is cultural differences that we want to navigate for live online meetings and trainings. And this idea came out of a discussion we actually had at the end of our culture chat last time. We were talking about this new need to be sensitive to cultural differences, and sort of put one example that actually had it in my mind was I was approached by a company that has been doing a lot of Zoom meetings, and they started having some cultural issues with communication because they were coming together from all over the world, and certain things were said or certain mannerisms were happening online, and other people from different places were getting very offended. So it brought up this idea that, you know, we still in our practice have to navigate these type of differences, even though we're online, you know, and communicating. So what we'd like to do is have a discussion today about some of these cultural differences or strategies that you may have to sort of navigate these differences and help make your meetings better. We came up with a list. It's not a list that we necessarily feel that we have to stick to. You may have even better and more ideas than we came up with, but we thought it'd be nice to just have a list to get talking and thinking about. So this was our list that we came up with. Differences that you may find in online meetings, things such as tempo, you know, the use of business English maybe, or the language of different participants, how to choose common language. These are things to do with that. English language caution. You have people that use sports jargon or the use of double negatives. That was one idea we had. Reading body language, you know, what does a smile mean in different cultures? The use of the video, what does silence mean? Eye contact, people's movement of their head, whether they're nodding or wobbling of the head, hand gestures. I'm just giving you ideas just to get you thinking. Timing, you know, start and stop times of meetings, how you handle breaks with different cultures, organizing information, discussion, providing materials ahead of meeting, things like this. So timing, influence of hierarchy in participation. So how you address greetings online and addressing people online, behavioral expectations, how to do Zoom meetings that minimize hierarchical behavior. That's tough. Communication, what's said and what's not said in an online meeting. So, and then the last one we thought of was just maybe under the heading of relationship building. So how are you establishing and maintaining good relationships? I think our culture chats are great examples of how we're relationship building, utilizing Zoom and utilizing these online platforms that we can get together and task-oriented cultures versus relationship-oriented cultures with the use of this type of platform. What kind of exercises that you may be using online. We did one exercise our last culture chat, which was the bingo, using games and trying to have people network in this regard. And then just like maybe with relationship building, how do people read body language and things like that. So that's our list. And what I've done is we've put this in the chat box. So you have this. If you want to take a picture of this, please do when we break you out into your chat boxes, or I'm sorry, breakout rooms. What we thought is, well, why don't we chat and talk in these breakout rooms until about the end of I'm talking, sorry. I'm saying 11:30, but I'm on EDT. So, but we'll go to about half of the hour so that you have some time to talk with each other. And I think, Ann, you put these people in about four people to a group. So
it's about 4 or 5 people in a group. Yep.
Okay, perfect. So are we ready to go into our breakout? Okay.
You're going to chat, somebody's going to scribe, and then we're going to come back.
Right. So if someone could just kind of keep some notes, if you wouldn't mind, anyone who would volunteer to email those notes to us, and somebody who'd be willing to talk. And like I said, this is just ideas. Please, you may have tons more, and we want to hear from you, and we want to hear what you're doing with your online meetings and trainings and how you're navigating these type of cultural differences.
And when you don't have to keep your eye on the clock. When the time is up, we'll close the breakout room and you'll magically be back here all together. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Time travel by magic.
All right.
Okay.
Here we go.
1, 2, 3.
You just have to sit there. Okay, so Millicent, I think I need to add you. Let's see, hold on.
Susanna, go.
Oh, where is she?
We lost
Where
her?
is she?
Did we lose somebody?
Oh, there
I
she is.
guess
She's
we-
in the middle. Okay, all right.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wait, there she is. Okay, good, good. We have her. Well, you know, as usual, we never have enough time in these.
Yeah.
The
And Amy,
breakout
now you
rooms
can
we'll
talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems we never started.
Yeah, we did. We did. Well, let's, you know, obviously we're open to talk about all these things. I thought it might be nice if I just went through some of the list and then we can add to this list to see what kind of conversations came up. What are some things that us with regard to tempo? Things like business English or the language of the participants. Are there any strategies or just stories or difficulties you found with this type of thing?
In our group, we didn't really go through each one of them as it was
Okay.
listed. But one of the things that we talked about is how much is really cultural, how much it might be a technology issue. And I think that's the problem of doing things online. Because if the connection, when somebody's speaking, if there's a lot of background noise or it cuts off and then they have a strong accent, it's like, okay, you can see the faces of everybody like, I don't understand anything you're saying, and you don't want to be disrespectful. Or the aspect of asking a question and somebody doesn't answer. And it's like, is that really a cultural thing? Because they're thinking, is that saving face? Or is that just they're muted? Or who knows, if they don't have the camera, maybe they step out of the online thing. So we talk, at least I share a little bit of that aspect, and everybody kind of agree that it's something about getting comfortable and mastering all the different tools that technology gives you as a facilitator.
Right, right. All right, well, then let's switch gears then a little. Why don't we just hear from you all, maybe with each breakout room that we had or each breakout group as you discuss. What were some of the highlights of things that you discussed instead of ticking off through the list? Let's just hear what you talked about. Like Tasha said, it went by really fast. So who is one of our breakout spokespeople that would like to just share what you talked about?
Shall I share something?
Yeah.
In my group was Sylvia, Tasha, how do I say it correctly? Angie?
Angie.
Okay, we were 4 of us. And the first thing we talked about was about English, and that was Sylvia who brought it in, that you have to be careful. It was the sort of generation gap, where you, from her generation, she makes a joke, for example, and the young generation, they don't understand, and they're just staring straight face at you from the screen. And and her solution, what she does is, of course, she's very much dependent on your facial expression, but it can be cultural that some people don't show expressions, but she relies on it. And if I am wrong, please correct me, Sylvia. If I
That's
forget
correct.
anything. Okay.
Correct.
I thought she said a great thing, Sylvia. You said it's not just language; it's lingo, and I thought that was excellent.
Lingo.
That is
Right.
Yeah. And we had a talk about the timing as well, and that was what Angie brought in. Angie brought in that it is always that if you speak of a time, let's say we begin at 5, then they come 5 over. Some of them are 5 minutes before. So it was good to have a rule of engagement. And she does it with her students, and she said, now we begin so late, and then we start, but some people like to hang on later. They don't finish at 5. Let's say if it is till 5, they like to hang on. And Sylvia had a nice example of a Q&A later, and before that, they just have a chat, and then they begin. Am I right, Sylvia?
Yes, have the chat before it starts. I always open up my my Zoom meetings 10 minutes early so they can come on and chat, as we did here. And then I start on time, no matter who's there or not there. And then there's Q&A, catch up, whatever, after whatever the time is to leave, because those people who are there on time should be rewarded, in my opinion, and from my cultural perspective.
Good point.
There's
is
one
there
more thing I
anybody-
would like to share. Is that okay? One more important thing what I found very good point from Tasha is that that problem I have, because I also give international students lessons online. And some of the students, because it's being recorded, they don't want to be on the screen, so they switch off the camera.
Yeah.
But then I lose them in that sense.
Right.
And Tasha said it was a very good one, is she had the same problem, but then she went into the why. She talked with the students and she asked what was happening. And then she realized that some students, because of certain anxiety problem, whatever problem they have, they didn't want to be on camera. So I like that point, that you go into the why somebody doesn't do or does the thing what they do. So am I right, Tasha? I found it a very important point.
Yeah, that I think, I had this perception they didn't want to be engaged, and I was, proven wrong. There were other reasons than my, preconceived notions.
Can I ask a question? This is a wonderful group to ask this question. Sylvia, I like that solution of saying we're going to start right on time, no matter who's there, and you can chat before.
Yeah.
That fits my monochronic culture as well.
Yeah.
But is there anybody on this call, I bet there is, who comes from a more polychronic from a culture where that feels like not the way to go, and you have come up with a different solution? How do your meetings get into the meat of the subject?
As you go.
I come from a very polychronic culture in Indonesia,
Yeah.
but I'm not. That frustrates me a bit more. So that's why the thing to do is to make the rules clear in the beginning, that the call will start at 5, so come before that. So it's just to make it clear, because otherwise people will arrive at 5 and then 5 after, and then
Yeah.
so it's just the way it is. Well, unfortunately, it's just the way it is. It is frustrating, but it's just the culture. I can't go against that unless I make it clear that they have to arrive 10 minutes before, because the call will start at 5 with or without you. So
Are there any other polychronic solutions?
Yeah.
I live and work in monochronic culture. However, still there are different personalities that we work with, right? Even people are here, even here in this culture, people are late. So I do make sure that when I schedule a training or a meeting or a class, I always have a write-up that I send them with the Zoom link saying, these are the rules of virtual class etiquette. Number 1, you're going to log on 5 to 10 minutes prior so that we can start on time. Right. Number 2, you're going to not eat. There will be no food. Well, of course, I'm sharing with you the rules that I really verbalize in a really, really kind and nice way. Of course, there are some things that I just want to, put ahead of time, that, if you have if you're drinking something, please drink from a cup or a glass. Do not drink from a bottle. So just to give them guidance, because if I feel that it would be rude if I tell them to correct their behavior after the fact, and they would feel embarrassed, rather than sending them a little write-up beforehand, so they, sort of managing expectations and allowing them to know the rules and to know how to really conduct themselves in the meeting. I also go over dress policy. Well, I just, need some, I usually say, please do not show up in sweatpants. Be aware that, camera might slip and then people might see your shorts. So do put something at the bottom.
Can I ask what age group you're teaching?
I teach corporate level, I teach university students, and I teach children.
Okay, all
And
right.
I keep them all as children.
And your specialty is protocol and etiquette, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think what we're hearing here is, it goes back to what Sylvia said, is this idea that rules of engagement are helpful in this cultural environment that we're navigating and this new online. And so rules of engagement at least give people preparatory time to understand, how that works. And so that sounds good to me. It seems fair to people and they know what to expect. That can help. Ricardo, I'm sorry, yes.
Well, I'm going to speak from a very polychronic perspective.
Yeah, that's what I want to hear. How did that go? Great.
Good.
If I have a whole list of rules of engagement, and the second and the third one, I started to find them a little bit either condescending or too thorough, I don't even read the rest ones. I mean, it's one of the things, an advice for people who are very analytical or very process oriented, you need to make it as simple and pragmatic as it is. And even little things, for example, if you just set the starting time, a reminder on 10 or 15 minutes before the hour, most likely people will be late. Because even they condition themselves as, okay, in 5 minutes, I'll start getting the connection. And if something goes a little bit off, they will not start on time. So I send them 30 minutes in advance, and Zoom automatically will send reminders unless they set and they change it to just 5 minutes before. So those are type of things that I think is a good idea. But as polychronics, we just can't manage too much information, and we just become start to exclude data.
So Ricardo, would a top 3 rules, is that a bit more manageable and maybe less condescending feeling?
Or an empathetic thing in the sense of to say, okay, if you click on this and this and this, then you're all set to connect. So then I don't worry about the details. I just know that there's a shortcut and then I can get things practical. But we just, and that's my experience also with a lot of millennials and Z generation.
Yeah.
They don't want data. They just want practicality, in my experience.
I've made that same experience, Ricardo. I worked at a company too, and it was a very international team with people also from polychronic cultures. And I've made that same experience when I wrote very detailed instructions. Nobody read that. So I totally agree.
Yeah,
well,
I do.
If I may add something, I think I wanted to add something I've learned from Brazilians I've worked with over the past 10 years. And I think this is pretty good advice for people living and working in a monochronic environment or who feel very monochronic. The Brazilian way that I've learned, it kind of is to take an onion approach, or excuse me, maybe it makes more sense if I say a Brussels sprouts approach. If you've ever prepared Brussels sprouts, you know that you have to peel off a lot to get to the core, and the core is actually the delicious part that you cook and eat. Or the onion, you peel off a lot of stuff on the outside, and what's inside the core is the good stuff. So when you have a meeting planned, you should definitely know what is the one essential thing that you have to get done today. And then that's the core. The one thing you must get done, and around your core, you maybe have 2 or 3 other things that are also important, but not as important as the one priority that you have. And you want to place the core in the middle of whatever you're doing, where you have everybody's attention, everybody's there, everybody's in the right mood to discuss the one important thing. And around it, you create rings or layers of other things that must be discussed. And if you take that approach, it's easy to add something or remove something from the list, because you will always get the one or two important things done in the core, and nobody feels like we're rushed into it, or we're pushed, or like, I'm like, hey, oh my gosh, we have 5 minutes, we have 2 more decisions to make. No, sorry, you can't speak now. Blah, 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 blah. I mean, that is the most frustrating thing ever for polychronics, and they feel like nothing gets done when you take such an approach. That's the one thing. The monochronics, they think they get a lot done when they do tuck, 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 tuck. Whereas polychronics thinks nothing gets done that way. And so maybe the onion or the Brussels sprouts approach might be something that could work.
Interesting. Interesting.
Oh, just adding that, I agree with you. That's why I wrote in the chat too, but I usually create a separate group. If it's like an ongoing call, it's a regular call, I create a separate group, like a WhatsApp group, or we use lots of WhatsApp in Indonesia, or a Facebook close group for us to chat and get to know each other, because I know that for us, relationship is much more important than the task. So if you get to know somewhere in other platform, and then you can get done the job easier in the call.
Good
idea.
Good.
That's absolutely true, because not everything needs to be done during that meeting. If we have a good relationship, if we just briefly talked about it, we might continue the discussion outside the meeting, or we continue on WhatsApp, on email, or whatever. So it's a spin-off. It's almost like a spin-off, and it continues on another platform.
Yes. Pauline, did you want to talk a little bit about what your group spoke about? I know we had some good examples from Justin too about participation, because that's another issue. We're all good at participating, but what do you do when trying to facilitate cultures that don't easily participate or may feel uncomfortable? Pauline, we talked about that issue.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, great.
So in our group, we had Nizana, Terry, let's see, I looked at my wrong list, but Justin, who else?
Amy. We had Amy.
And Amy. So sorry,
Yeah,
I looked at a different list.
That's okay. We all moved.
So what we talked a lot about was engagement strategy. So Justin's example, being in Rwanda, being in culture that is a bit more reserved, was about a bit about the culture, tempo. You know, it could be personality, but in general, the use of the chat box, right? So that it allows people who don't necessarily jump right in verbally to be able to type out their thoughts. And for us to be more cognizant about the pace of the meeting, you know, it's, especially as a facilitator, you know, are we, like, I'm from New York City originally, so that says it all. For those of you who are not from New York City, it's just fast, 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 right? But I'm also Asian, so Justin reminded us that, you know, the pace of the meeting, to be cognizant of that, and that people, number one, may not be as expressive. Number two, the culture itself is not a fast culture, and to either use, again, chat box, smaller groups, break them out into break rooms so that they can have more time for discussion.
Can I add something here? Just one moment. I just took a TEEP coaching class, and she did something very subtle. It was very interesting that she had the list of all the names, and she would say, okay, now I will call on John, Susanna, and then Tasha. Okay, and so each person had a chance to talk, and then, okay, after that, I will call on Amy, Anne, and Terry. And it was just, it worked really, really well. And just a subtle thing. And it just worked really well to get especially everyone involved. Everyone, to make sure everyone said it, yeah.
So Michelle, we actually talked about that as well, in terms of technique of needs to be set up in the beginning. a bit, because it puts people on the spot too of, oh gosh, they're going to call on me. So that throughout the whole, if that's not an expectation, you know, guidelines for engagement, right? So that we can have the most productive meeting and want to hear from everyone, then it's like, people just don't like to hear their own voices sometimes too. So I agree with you, Michelle, what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And it's all, I think that it's all about how we position it. So if we're asked them, oh, you know, I would like to see how you feel about this, what do you know, what are your thoughts, what are your experiences? Sort of, if we position this as if you participate, you're helping me because I'm here all alone giving this, you know, this training. I think people are kind and they usually jump in, as opposed to saying, okay, you go ahead, you know, sort of putting them, so rather than putting them on a spot, we are inviting them maybe just to sort of help us, not really help us, but, you know, just to say, oh, please, you know, I would love to hear what everyone else thinks about that.
What about some of our other groups? We're closing in about 10 minutes, so I want to make sure everyone has some voice in this so we could hear from, is there another group we haven't heard from that had some other things? I appreciate the dialogue and everyone participating. It's awesome.
I can share some things from our group. So in the group we had Michaela, Ronald, Fozia, Peggy, and myself. So the thing that we talked about was eye contact and the differences across cultures. So that along the same line, interjecting and interrupting, how that could have different interpretation and perceptions. Turning the camera on and off, and also creating rules of engagement around that, and being on the same page. What to wear, and creating rules of engagement around that as well. And the other thing we had was around interacting, especially in big groups. So for example, raising hands through the Zoom function, but then not necessarily having that picked up by the speaker, and then that could feel challenging, frustrating. So what do we do next? Yeah, those were probably the key things that have not been mentioned yet from our group.
Nice, very good. Any other group that we haven't heard from?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Polly. I thought it was one more.
So okay, I was in a group with Virginia, Dee, and Ricardo, and Anne as well. So I think pretty much everyone's touched on almost everything we talked about, just maybe from a slightly different angle. But the main thing we spent most time talking about was kind of the importance of establishing a kind of safe place to admit that, you know, that virtual communication is awkward for everyone, whether it's with the same culture, and just to sort of be kind of lay those cards on the table from the outset and explain and apologize really if it feels awkward, if things go wrong. We're all trying our best, and to kind of, you know, I think Virginia said something interesting about when with her work with Chinese professors. She sort of says, is it okay if I ask this question, you know, I'm sorry if it's the wrong thing to say. She said she's much more used to, you know, the whole importance of attending to body language and kind of silence and all these things that matter so much in Chinese culture that she knows she can't do online. So she's sort of just being upfront about that. So I don't know if I've forgotten anything. I think those were the main things. Ricardo talked a lot about silence, you know, the sort of issue of is it cultural or is it technical? And yeah, establishing house rules. It's kind of pretty much everything everyone's talked about. Just trying to create that safe space so that everyone can sort of empathize with each other.
Yeah. Anyone else have some input?
I want to just say that I'm sorry I'm late. I'm taking an online teaching certification. So I was with my mentor as you are with yours. And I want to say hi to Anne because I've just rejoined and it's been a long time. I was in a DC course for her and I haven't been doing any intercultural training in Tampa, Florida much, but it's still very interesting. And I'm from Germany, so for me, all of these humanities, and so I do a lot of the things that are international with classes, but I'm happy to see and meet you all, so thank you.
Nice to have you here, Suzanne.
Nice to see you. Thank you.
Suzanne, Jasper, did you also have your hand up?
Oh yeah, I was in a group with Amy, John, Renata, and Michelle, and we talked a lot of the things that we just discussed or touched on. For example, how agendas can be helpful, but they can also be a challenge for people from polychronic cultures. When you do international teams, if you say, we have to start at this time, we're going to end at this time, and these are the points we're going to discuss, everybody maybe has 20 seconds to give input, and then a lot of these people feel cut short. And so a way to address the need to talk a little bit and also to build relationships, this is what we mainly talk about, relationship building, is maybe to create breakout rooms where people can talk to each other, or to do a sort of check-in session where people chat a little bit beforehand. I believe John gave the example of, he said, give me one thorn and one rose that happens to you since we last talked to each other. And that kind of is a nice introduction into the meeting, and kind of a nice transition into the agenda then. Another challenge that is the lack of body language and eye contact, and that's kind of where the Zoom fatigue comes from, because all this is important in relationship building. So let's see, I think we had a few more suggestions for solutions. We touched on a lot of the things already that we discussed. I think that was for the most part it.
Oh, good.
And Renata wrote a very interesting article on LinkedIn about this subject too. So yeah.
Yeah, and I put the link, actually, if you look in the chat box, that link is in the chat box. I would like to click on that link or look at it and see what Renata put out there. It's very helpful. So we wanted to shout out to Renata for her article. So that's Renata right there. One last thing before we wrap up is something that just happened recently when I was partnering actually with Amy on and it really brought to mind this idea with Zoom has compartmentalized how we do our business. So for some of us who used to do maybe a workshop for 8 hours, I know Ricardo, you and I have partnered together and have this issue. You now have 2 or 3 hours. And we used to have a lot more of this, maybe it's polychronic, sort of sense of having more time. And so we actually had a client we were working with and working through the materials, and all of a sudden he's like, I have to go, I have another meeting. Clicked right off. And it was just, I think it was really for even myself, but Amy also, we were like, wow, did he not like what we were doing? Was it useful? 2 days later with our evaluations, I mean, they were fantastic, and he was very, very happy, but he was just very monochronic, and he had to move on to his next meeting. And so that seems to be a challenge too that I'm having to, I don't know if all of you are feeling this too, but things are becoming very compartmentalized with utilizing the Zoom, and people are, clicking right off to go on to their next meeting sometimes. And we had to ask ourselves, was that a cultural, was it dissatisfaction, or does he really just have to go to a meeting? So that was just something that we brought up in our group that I don't know that maybe some of you are also struggling with. I know that I am, and having to work with that timing.
I see that's happening in our group as we speak in real time, that people are signing off. So right now, so.
Yes, everyone, but I do want to be mindful that we've taken an hour a day. Before we wrap up, please email us with notes. Those of you who are the scribes, if you could send us these notes, we would like to put something together and acknowledge our time together. As we look to our next culture chat, I do want to say that culture chat came from our last one, that people were talking about what's on their mind and what they were thinking. So that's why we tackled Zoom and the cultural differences that we have to navigate. So our next thing that's on our mind that we'd like to discuss, and Anne, I think maybe we'll put it in, is, just with the current situation in the globe, we're thinking about race, and we're thinking about the impact of race in what we do in the intercultural field. We're definitely, I don't consider myself a diversity expert, but what is it that we are running up against race, and how can we do our work better with consideration to that. And if you want to elaborate on that, but that's something just to put in your minds that we'd like to do for our next culture chat in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'll just say that I personally have been thinking, what could the Interchange Institute be doing? What skills can I offer? What can I personally be doing about my own learning? And we thought it would be interesting to have a conversation with you around the world. I know every country's take on the issue of race and difference is unique and rooted in its own history. And so we thought it would be an interesting global chat to have, and I would benefit from it in my own thinking about how I can actually move some checkers forward and actually make a difference. So that's
as a matter of fact, I've been thinking about the same thing. How can I integrate diversity and inclusion in what I already do? Because I see the links, even though, like Terry said, I'm not a specialist in that field, maybe not yet. And I'm actually taking an online course on diversity and inclusion right now, because I really think there are connections, there are ways how all those fields could be mutually beneficial. And yeah, that would be a wonderful topic to discuss. Absolutely.
That is the topic I was also about to say, because I think it would be very interesting to hear all from the globe about diversity and inclusion. And I think it's more not about diversity, but more about inclusion, how you can manage, and in a virtual manner, because I have been giving a lot of workshops on diversity and inclusion to international teachers at the university who teach international students. There's a lot of demand on it here also at the moment. But that was a workshop that's very different than when you are sitting virtually with all the thresholds, what we just talked about. It would be nice if we could have that for the next session.
So we'll do that, and we'll think broadly. There's the whole field of diversity and inclusion, at least in the United States, has a history and a body of knowledge and an expertise. And in the field of relocation, training, helping people move to a new country, we have questions about that as well. What's it like to be a minority member? What do you bring from having grown up as a minority member when you go to be an expat? What kinds of research studies might the Interchange Institute do? Maybe we could invent together that would shed light on what the needs are. What is the experience of being different in a new culture? Those kinds of things. So we'll look forward to doing that in 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks.
Time. So every 2 weeks, and we're alternating the time, right?
So
that's correct. So July 1st. Put it in your diaries and your calendar.
Which date?
July 1st. It's a Wednesday.
But 3 hours earlier than this one.
Yeah, so 12 UTC.
Right.
And what is that in Amsterdam?
What time is it in Amsterdam now? Are you at 5 p.m.?
I think
I was today at 5 p.m. Yes.
Yeah, it's 2 p.m.
2 p.m. Yeah.
2?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah. I have to check too.
Ronald, that will be a little bit better for you.
That's true.
Amy, you can come in your pajamas.
Not fair.
What's the time in Rwanda? Justin?
It's now 6.
6 a.m. or 6 p.m.?
6 p.m. Sorry, yeah.
Oh, good.
6 p.m.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay.
Good.
Well, I want to just say thank you again, everyone, for coming and all of your participation and all of the work that you do. Look forward to seeing you at our next culture chat. We were going to stay on if anyone wanted to learn more about the Interchange Institute or had any questions for us. So we'll stay on for a few more minutes. If you need to chat with us, we'll be here. And if not, we wish you good evening, good day, where you are at in the world.